Hi, this is a video reflection on today's scripture readings. The scripture readings that I'm going to be looking at are from Ephesians chapter 1, verse 3 to 14, and from Mark's Gospel chapter 6, verse 14 to 29. So feel free to stop the video, have a read of those, and come back. We've got two readings that are basically about households, but I think we need to ask, in both cases, what kind of household is this? In the world that the Bible comes from, there wasn't really this nuclear structure of the household that we have in white Western society, where you've got two parents and on average 2.5 kids and a clear boundary around the household. Instead, you've got a number of generations living under the same roof, and you'd have the oldest male member of the house would be the head of the household. But you'd also have people probably living in the house who might not be part of the family. If it was a big household, there might be a number of slaves, and they're people who their family has probably gotten in debt and had to sell them into slavery. And so those people are members of the household, but they're not members of the family, and they're probably not going to inherit anything. They're probably not going to have any inheritance. You might also have other families that don't live inside the household but are connected into the household because they've got some kind of debt or obligation to this family. And so there's not clear boundaries around the household. There's people who don't live in the household who are still connected into it. And if you looked at the royal house of a particular country, it's kind of like they've got connections to all of the households. All of the households have got obligations going back to them. And it might be that that royal house actually has an obligation to another stronger royal house. That's the situation with Herod's house. Herod has a powerful household, but only because the Romans have put the Herod family in charge. And a lot of their own people aren't really very happy with them. Herod is a king, but he's beholden to the Romans, and he's not in favor with his own people. He arrests John the Baptizer because John is publicly criticizing the house of Herod, and that's bringing shame to Herod's house, and it's probably stoking some of the disapproval of Herod's house among his own people too. But he loves listening to John. But he's compromised because of his alliances and his obligations. And so that his position is secure, he uses his own daughter to entertain his court, to keep his friends happy. And he shows off by saying in front of the court that he'll give her anything that she asks for. Now, when he says that, he's asked for John the Baptist's head, he could say that he realizes he's said something stupid and that he can't fulfill his promise, of cutting off the head of somebody who in some way he respects, even though they're in conflict. But because all the people around are seeing that he's promised, and he's trying to make himself look like the big, strong, powerful head of a household, head of a country, he goes with it. He takes the life of this man. And the child really has no choice about her involvement in this. She would have had to do what her father says. She would have had to get up and entertain his friends. And she would have had to keep her mother happy as well, since her mother is also high-ranking in the household. She has no choice about honouring her mother's command. So she has to ask for John's head. The way this story is being told is to show how perverse and corrupt and compromised the ruling house of the country is. They're grotesque and disgusting, and they're going to come after Jesus in the same way that they've come after John. Jesus is offering a different way, but the house of Herod is going to hunt Jesus down in the same way that they've hunted John down. People were enslaved to households or dependent on households like this one. And they might they might be dependent on a household with a good and honest leader, but he might still be obligated to a more powerful man who is not good and honest. And so the household could still get entangled in these kind of situations. In Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus, he is saying to the Christians there that they have been given a place in a new household. What kind of household is it? It's the kind of household that welcomes people in, redeeming them from slavery, buying them out of slavery. They've been slaves to sin, having no choice about doing things that are not good, but God has bought them out of slavery so they can be part of God's household. And they won't be slaves in God's household, they'll be heirs. They'll be accepted as full members of God's family with an inheritance. God has been willing to stoop down to us and suffer with us in order to redeem us from slavery to sin. God has not been the kind of head of the house who thinks himself above that. God has not been aloof and acted as though we were lesser. God has been open to us about what God is doing, redeeming the world, bringing the whole cosmos back together. This is a household where God is inviting the whole cosmos in, where everyone is adopted as a child and an heir, where the head of the house doesn't lord it over the children, but does whatever is needed to ensure their freedom. The question is, what kind of households will we have? What kind of household will the house that we live in be? What kind of household is the church going to be? How is God inviting us to live together?